Hey, Washington Commanders fan. If you're wondering what to do during this bye week after 6 consecutive losses and a depressing record of 3 wins and 8 losses, I have a suggestion that might give you some hope for the future. While our team rests and tries to recover from this nightmarish season, college football is happening, and there are some incredible prospects that we need to start following right away. But before we talk about the future, we need to discuss a grotesque mistake that happened before this bye week, and may have been the last straw that definitively sank any remaining hope for this year. I'm going to show you 3 college players that should be on our radar for the 2026 draft, and then we'll talk about a decision that cost too much and should have been made long before. Subscribe to the channel now and hit that like button because you can't miss the analyses we're going to do in the coming weeks on how to rebuild this franchise. Let's start by talking about the college prospects we need to keep an eye on this weekend, because even with just 6 draft picks, nailing each one will be absolutely crucial for the future. Adam Peters can either hold the positions we have or negotiate to get additional picks, but regardless of the strategy, we need to identify the right players starting now. The first name you need to know is Makai Lemon, a wide receiver from USC who has legitimate arguments to be considered the best receiver in the entire draft. This kid is 6 feet tall and weighs 188 pounds, and even though his size isn't among the largest, he plays like a giant fighting for every ball that comes his way. Lemon has been the most consistent player in college football all season, and when you watch his tapes, it's clear why there's so much hype around his name. The route running that this kid has is simply flawless. He knows exactly how to create separation from defenders, and even when he's well covered, which doesn't happen often, his hands turn into a true magnet for the ball. He's an absolute nightmare for any opposing defense, and considering our desperate need to strengthen the receiving core, especially with so many injuries and veterans not producing, he should be at the top of our target list. USC, which is ranked 15th in the country, will face Oregon, ranked 7th. And this is exactly the type of big game where top prospects have their clutch moments. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Lemon puts on a spectacular performance in this game and starts entering the discussions about being a top 10 pick and definitely the best wide receiver available in the draft. These games against high-level opponents are where players prove they can perform on the biggest stages. And if he dominates the Oregon defense, which is one of the best in the country, it will be impossible to ignore him. The question is whether he will be available when our turn to pick arrives, because if he keeps playing at this level, he will likely rise significantly in the rankings and could be picked before we get a chance on. But at the very least, we need to keep an eye on him and hope that somehow he falls to our position, or that Peters can work some magic to move up in the draft and grab him. The second prospect that needs to be on our radar is Zion Young, an edge rusher from Missouri who is having a fantastic season. The Tigers, ranked 22nd, will face Oklahoma, which is 8th. This is the only other matchup between ranked teams this weekend aside from the USC game. Young stands 6'5" and weighs 265 pounds, and so far has racked up 6 sacks, 33 quarterback pressures, and 2 forced fumbles. But what truly impresses about him is not just the pressure numbers, it's his ability to stop the run game with brutal efficiency. Few first-year players manage to do this right away in the NFL, but his 8.7% stop rate against runs shows he has the necessary discipline and technique. Given our desperate situation on the defensive line, especially after injuries that ended the seasons of Dorrance Armstrong Jr. and Dietrich Wise Jr., we urgently need pass rushers who can contribute immediately. Young will likely be an option available in the 3rd round, but if he continues to play at this level and has a good pre-draft evaluation process, he could quickly rise in the rankings and end up being selected in the 2nd or 3rd round. The Commanders could very well trade positions if we can secure a high enough pick, and he is definitely a strong candidate worth considering. Seeing how he performs against a quality offensive line from Oklahoma will give us a better idea of how ready he is for the next level. The third and final prospect we need to keep a close eye on is Colton Hood, a cornerback from Tennessee who would be a perfect solution for our completely battered secondary. We desperately need to reinforce this position given the horrendous performance of the defense this season, and someone needs to replace Marshawn Lattimore, who will likely be leaving this offseason. Hood stands 6'1" and weighs 195 pounds, and he is making the most of his opportunity as a second-year player. He has the length and speed to keep up with any wide receiver on the outside and is not afraid to battle at the point of contact with bigger receivers. The most impressive part is that he's allowed only 24 receptions on 393 coverage snaps this season. That number is absolutely fantastic and shows how reliable he is in man coverage. Tennessee is playing against the Florida Gators, and this is a big opportunity for Hood to continue building his resume and producing standout plays that will catch the attention of NFL scouts. If he can neutralize Florida's top receivers and make some impactful plays, he will solidify his position as one of the best cornerback options available in the draft. Considering we will need to completely rebuild our secondary, having someone like Hood who can play on the outside alongside Trey Amos would be perfect to kick off that renewal. These three players represent real and urgent needs that we have, so it is definitely worth following their games this weekend. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room that nobody wants to admit but everyone knows, the grotesque mistake with Matt Gay that may have definitively ruined any chance we had of salvaging something this season. During the preseason, Adam Peters signed Gay, giving him the largest one-year contract for a kicker in NFL history. The expectation was that he would solve the field goal issues we had in 2024 with Cade York, Austin Seibert, and Zane Gonzalez showing inconsistent performances. But instead of solving the problem, Gay became the problem itself, and the signs of this appeared early on. In the 3 preseason games, he made only 3 of 5 attempts, which should have raised a giant red flag. During the first 3 weeks of the regular season, the situation worsened further as he made only 3 of 6 attempts. Look, I understand that Peters invested a large contract and wanted to give the player time to adjust, but there came a point where it turned into sheer stubbornness. Gay should have been released by week 3 at the latest, and ideally, his 1-for-3 performance against the Green Bay Packers in week 2 would have been enough. Remember what happened with York? It took just 1 game for the Commanders to cut him, after he missed both passes he attempted in his 2024 debut. But Gay had that expensive contract that the organization needed to justify, and that clearly influenced the decision to keep him for too long. Let me be very clear here. Gay is not the main reason we didn't meet expectations this season. It would have been a tough year anyway, considering the insane injuries, the brutal schedule, and the harsh realities about the roster and coaching staff that needed to be faced. But keeping him for so long, after clearly inadequate performances, was a costly mistake that didn't have to happen. If we had beaten the Dolphins, a game in which Gay was literally the reason for the loss by missing 2 field goals, including one that would have secured the win, we would have entered the bye week with some positive momentum and a more favorable schedule ahead. At best, Daniels and McLaurin return healthy, and Washington strings together some wins to get back into playoff contention. That's no longer up for discussion now, and it probably wouldn't be anyway because the problems go far beyond the kicking game. But the main issue that infuriates me is that the kicker is the most dispensable position in football. There's no reason to wait for a player in that position to find himself when you can simply sign someone who's available and get better performance immediately. The Commanders finally made the right decision in cutting Gay and signing Jake Moody, but it came too late to save the season. Peters cannot ignore this fatal mistake that caught up to him because it shows a failure in the decision-making process. When something is clearly not working, you need to act quickly, not wait until the damage is irreparable. The harsh truth is that things unraveled too quickly for this team, and now we have to face a crucial offseason where Peters will need to work hard to correct the mistakes. He needs to drastically rejuvenate the roster. And fortunately, we have the salary cap space to be aggressive in free agency. With only 6 draft picks, each one needs to hit the mark, and that's why following these college prospects from now on is so important. There are gaps everywhere in our roster, and the injuries only exposed deeper structural issues that already existed. The big gamble that Peters took by retaining a veteran roster and giving that massive contract to a problematic kicker has finally cost us dearly, and now we need to deal with the consequences. The question I leave for you to reflect on during this week off is as follows. Considering that Adam Peters clearly made serious judgment errors by keeping Matt Gay for too long, and by betting so heavily on a veteran roster that did not deliver results, do you still fully trust his decisions to rebuild this team through the draft and free agency? Or will this pattern of stubbornness and excessive loyalty to players who are clearly not performing continue to cost us dearly and prevent us from making the necessary changes to finally become a competitive team again?